Welcome aboard the only Amtrak train with views of Mexico, a journey on America's oldest named train through beautiful desert landscapes. This is the Amtrak Sunset Limited, and on my USA Rail Pass adventure, it was my gateway to the American West. But why did my ticket to Phoenix, Arizona put me on a different train altogether and drop me off 35 miles outside the city? The only way to find out is to go for a ride. Let's take a look at the map. The Sunset Limited begins in New Orleans, Louisiana, before it crosses the Bayou State into Texas, where it serves Houston and San Antonio. From there, it serves the west of Texas, coming close to the Mexican border multiple times, and arrives in El Paso. It then passes through a corner of New Mexico, reaches Tucson, and continues through Arizona to Los Angeles, California. I began my ride in Texas' capital of Austin, which is here, not on the Sunset Limited's route at all. But that wasn't a problem, because Austin is served by another train known as the Texas Eagle. This Chicago to Texas train has a coach and sleeper car that get transferred to the Sunset Limited where they meet in San Antonio. This is called a through-car operation, and it's the only one left on the Amtrak system. Because I'd be staying in the same coach between both trains, I only needed one rail pass segment to make my journey from Austin to Phoenix, Arizona. We crawled south to San Antonio and were promptly kicked off the train. The Texas Eagle pulls its cars forward into the platform, then a few hours later, the Sunset Limited backs in and pulls them out again. That means every seat in the through coach has to be turned around, which means everyone needs to be kicked off the train to make room. But hey, at least there was a Denny's open late.
There is like a 5-hour gap between when the Texas Eagle comes into San Antonio and when the Sunset Limited comes into San Antonio. So, I'm currently getting breakfast at, 10:30 p.m. Yeah, life's great.
Once I'd had breakfast for a very late dinner, I headed down to San Antonio's Riverwalk and took a look at the famous Alamo. While no longer in use, the city's former Sunset Station still sits next to the current Amtrak building. This was built by the Southern Pacific, the railroad that ran the Sunset Limited from 1894 until the founding of Amtrak in 1971, making it the oldest continually operating named train in the US. I got back on board our now stationary car and fell asleep. A metallic crash of couplers woke me up briefly as the westbound Sunset Limited from New Orleans coupled up to us. Then I passed out again until the next morning.
Good morning, everyone, from the Sunset Limited. I'm sure we've made a lot of progress overnight. We're still in Texas?
Yeah, we're still in Texas. Texas big, man. Oh, there's a log right there.
Yes, not only were we still in Texas, but we had also just stopped in the town of Sanderson, home to the least used station on the entire Amtrak network. It served only 153 passengers in the entirety of 2021, the year I filmed this, an average of less than one per day. This trip was my first time in Texas outside of an airport transfer, and my East Coast self had been surprised by how green Eastern Texas was. More about that in 2 previous videos. But now, we were in West Texas, which looked much more like how I pictured the state. There was also a strange notification on my phone from a few hours earlier, welcoming me to Mexico. Of course, the train never actually crossed the border, but during the night, we had come within a few yards of it, and my phone had probably picked up a signal from one of their towers. This may have happened in Del Rio, where the train passes near the Mexican town of Ciudad Acuña. Mountains gave way to flat desert as we crossed into mountain time. Kind of ironic. And I settled down to enjoy the ride in the train's lounge car. Someone had set up a boombox, and for hours on end we were serenaded with reggae, R&B, and soul. It would have bothered me if it was bad music. For a 12-year period starting in 1993, the Sunset Limited was truly transcontinental, running all the way between Florida and Los Angeles. But track damage following 2005's Hurricane Katrina truncated the route back to its original start point in New Orleans. And unfortunately, that's not the only tragedy to befall the route. In 1993, an eastbound train plunged off a bridge in Alabama, killing 47 people in Amtrak's deadliest accident to date. 2 years later, a train derailed in Arizona, killing 1, after spikes had been deliberately removed from the track. Signals showed nothing amiss, having been overridden from their normal danger warnings. Almost 30 years later, the case of who sabotaged the train remains unsolved. The desert stretched before us, dry and empty. But do you know what else is empty? January 2025. That's when I have a massive break in my grad school schedule for travel, and coincidentally, when I anticipate running out of footage to make more videos. If you'd like to see this channel continue into February and beyond, Join my Patreon for early access to uploads and bonus content. Also, where should I go in January? Let me know in the comments.
Really? Really?
Around midday, we crawled into El Paso, the largest city in western Texas, where we had a fresh air stop. From here, I could take a good look at our double-decker Superliner cars, including the observation lounge. Two things make this station special. The first is the Burrito Lady, known to every seasoned Sunset Limited rider, who sells her wraps for $3 to hungry passengers. I ate one off camera and it was pretty good. The second is that you can literally see another country from here. Ciudad Juarez, one of Mexico's largest cities, sits just over the Mexican border, and you can still see it for several minutes after the train starts rolling. For the first few decades of Amtrak's operations, you could cross the border here and catch a Ferrocarriles Nacionales de Mexico train down to Mexico City. This was eliminated with the privatization of rail in Mexico. Lately, the Mexican government hopes to restart the service. We crossed the Rio Grande and entered New Mexico. The desert scenery was wilder now, with colorful cliffs and rock formations. And as we entered Arizona, it began to rain. Yes, it actually rains in the desert, and it's beautiful. Rain gave way to early sunset colors, and I found myself wondering, how could you not call this train the Sunset Limited? Now, fun fact, this portion of the route is the reason cities like Tucson and Yuma aren't in Mexico. While Arizona and New Mexico became U.S. territory through the Mexican-American War, this chunk of the two states was added later through the Gadsden Purchase of 1854, a further expansion to the south, specifically for the purposes of building a railway. That railway became the Southern Pacific Line we were riding now. Just outside of Tucson, we passed an aircraft boneyard, a massive outdoor storage facility for planes taking advantage of the dry, hot desert conditions. Let me know in the comments what these different planes are, I'm sure some of you know. Then we were in Tucson, which was another fresh air stop.
We've got about 45 minutes here, so let's see what we can see. 45 minutes until I have to be back in the train. It's another 20 minutes cushion time before the train leaves.
I jumped off and took a joyride on Tucson's amazing little streetcar system.
Oh no! See, this is why I don't like these sorts of advertisements. They cover up the window.
More about this in a future video. Our diesels finished fueling as the desert sunset lit up the sky. Taking a seat in the observation lounge, I enjoyed the reds, oranges, and purples above us as we made our way towards Phoenix. Except we weren't going to Phoenix. Trains used to stop in Arizona's capital, but after the Southern Pacific was purchased by railroad giant Union Pacific, this happened.
Okay, now we're in charge, let's clean house. I think we should start by abandoning part of the Phoenix-Yuma line.
Wait, no, you can't do that! We used those tracks for the Sunset Limited!
Oh yeah? Well, slip us some cash for maintenance and we'll talk.
No, we're not gonna do that.
Well, what else are you gonna do? Have your only train in south central Arizona serve the 5th most populous city in the nation via a tiny town 35 miles away with a platform the length of a single Superliner car, causing trains to stop like 4 times to let everybody off?
That was oddly specific, but sure, that sounds great. And that's exactly what happened when we pulled into Little Maricopa Station. My poor Phoenix friends had to drive 70 miles round trip to pick me up from the train. As it turned out, there was also an Amtrak throughway van. Yes, van, not bus, from here to the Phoenix airport. But Amtrak hopes to eventually get trains back into Phoenix, which is currently the largest US city with no intercity rail. The station is still there, according to Google Maps. Do you think Phoenix or Ciudad Juarez will have rail service restored first? Let me know in the comments. Overall, I loved the Sunset Limited. It was like a beautifully immersive landscape painting of the southwestern desert, slowly evolving from sunrise to, well, sunset. Does it do its job as a serious passenger train? Well, kinda. It only runs 3 days a week per direction, making it truly limited in how useful it can be. But if your timing lines up, it's absolutely worth it. At least so long as it's not 4 hours late, which it was when I was heading west from Arizona a few days later. I ended up rage quitting and taking a Flixbus to California. Of course, that's a story for another time.